Over the last 2 summers, I had the privilege of attending the Sitka Fine Arts Camp. My second year, I spent a majority of my time in the painting classroom working on pieces and talking to an artist named Gustavo Martinez, a Mexican indigenous artist. All of the teachers of the camp were allowed to take a class from someone else during their free hour, so Gustavo took up black and white painting. I looked over at his piece and saw a beautiful painting of an Aztec guardian. After some talking, turns out the majority of his pieces are ceramic sculptures of these guardians. He showed me a picture of some of his earliest work dating back to 2005, and I was amazed by one of them. It was titled Seated Warrior Scribe. He said it took a span of almost 6 months to complete. Seated Warrior Scribe by Gustavo Martinez should be considered one of the great works of art because of its chroma, composition, textures, context, and mass. One of the first reasons why, as the Seated Warrior Scribe should be considered a piece of art, is the magnitude of its chroma. Chroma, defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, can be described as a quality of color combining hue and saturation. Since Seated Warrior Scribe was made out of solely clay, it has a rich red essence to it. Having such a strong chroma to the piece draws the viewer in, and any subtle etches or designs pop out because it has a different shade. In the lap of the Seated Warrior Scribe is what looks like a crate with a tomato on the lid. The chroma of the crate is a slate gray, a great contrast to the red of the warrior. The idea behind the Seated Warrior Scribe is that he is the keeper of knowledge. Historyplex 2014. With the crate being there, we can infer that this is where the Seated Warrior Scribe is keeping all of his knowledge. Interestingly enough, Gustavo Martinez added this piece to his Aztec Guardian series, yet the origin of the Seated Warrior is Egyptian. Historyplex 2014. Martinez has always been the type of artist that uses things around him to create his pieces. This concept is especially prominent in the Seated Warrior Scribe. Martinez lives in Southern California, where there is a lot of Mexican influence. He has taken this to heart and started getting into the concepts of the Guardians in the early 2000s. Being always drawn to ceramics, he started using red clay because it was accessible in his region. Seated Warrior Scribe is almost completely composed of red clay. This gives it its nice chroma. Out of all the different types of clay found around the world, red clay is one of the most universal thanks to its composition. Knowing the Seated Warrior Scribe was composed of red clay, I wondered what really made up the clay. According to Sciencing.com, in an article written by Marie-Louise Bleu, we can find that clay is made through the weathering or decomposition of rocks. As the clay becomes more and more weathered, that's what changes the type of clay produced. Red clay is only found when clay deposits are highly weathered. Bleu, 2019. Red clay has a history for painting, but because of its molecular composition, it is one of the best types of clay to work with for pottery. No wonder Martinez chose it. Seated Warrior Scribe is also full of small scratched details, which develops a strong presence of texture in the piece. One of the most interesting details of the piece is the word no entendiendo, which is etched on the scribe's chest. This word means I don't understand in Spanish, which is ironic since the meaning of the Seated Warrior Scribe is that he knows everything. The rest of the body is etched with little carvings that add depth and detail to the piece. Some of the scratches seem messy, yet they are all together at the same time. On the back of the Seated Warrior Scribe is an array of blocked curvy doors. The frames of the doors are painted white to help accentuate them even further. Martinez could have continued the pattern of etched detail on the back of the sculpture, but went with new shapes. Since the Seated Warrior Scribe is supposed to hold knowledge, this may be Martinez's way of showing how the scribe would try to share his knowledge with the world. It looks as if his knowledge is flooding out between the textural etches and the curvy doors on the back. So far, we've covered most of the context of the Seated Warrior Scribe. When the original version of the Seated Warrior Scribe was discovered in Egypt, it was a sculpture of a man sitting at a writing desk. The expression on his face looked as if he was in deep contemplation, like he was trying to think of every possible thing that was important that needed to be written down. Historyplex 2014. The original piece was also made of limestone, which is native to Egypt. Martinez used a combination of its origin and his own culture to create the Seated Warrior Scribe. The mass of the Seated Warrior Scribe should also be mentioned as to why the sculpture is a piece of art. The presentation of the sculpture has the scribe seated on a bundle of logs. From one knee to the other, it is 5 logs wide, all side by side. From the front to back, it is almost the same. The piece is not hollow either, so it is extremely heavy. When Martinez showed me the picture of this piece at camp, I had asked him how tall it was. He said that it was approximately 5 feet tall, the same height as me, and that's without the logs underneath it. Seated Warrior Scribe should be considered a piece of great artwork because of its chroma, composition, textures, context, and mass. Discovering the meaning behind this piece was an interesting puzzle for me. As an indigenous artist, Gustavo Martinez does a great job of combining current art forms with his culture's beliefs. All too often, indigenous art is not looked at as an equal amongst those that were made by Western artists such as Van Gogh or Michelangelo. It is refreshing to see the native art is still celebrated in many different forms and from different cultures. Works cited: Blue, Marie Louise, What is Red Clay, Sciencing.com, 2nd March 2019. Chroma, Merriam-Webster, merriam-webster.com/dictionary/chroma. Martinez, Gustavo, Seated Warrior Scribe, Gustavo Martinez, Weebly, 2007. Website is gustavomartinez.weebly.com/guardians.html. What does the seated scribe symbolize? The answer is mystifying. Historyplex, 30 December 2014. Historyplex.com/what-does-seated-scribe-symbolize.